Puzzle Piece Cincy project. Yes, and this is being recorded. So I am an anthropologist and a poet who essentially just studies and writes about people. I think that people are probably my favorite animals. We have a lot of interesting mannerisms. Our collectives are fascinating, and I've dedicated my life to studying and understanding people as best as we possibly can. I have a master's degree in sociocultural anthropology from the University of Cincinnati. I graduated in 2018, and I just moved to New York City to start my MFA in creative writing. I'm working on a poetry degree at the Writers Foundry here in Brooklyn. So I am fully planning to maximize my time spent as a professional anthropologist and poet. Should be finished with my degree, hopefully in 2 years, but we'll see what happens. And as Cal mentioned, this project is part of an Art Space is Your Space residency at Wave Pool. I sort of pitched this project to Cal about a year ago, and it was really difficult to articulate. Um, Anthropologists practice what we call ethnography. Ethno means people or culture and society, and then graphy means writing. So it's the practice of writing about people and society and cultures. Typically, that's done in a very academic format where you have very specific methods, you have very specific ways of gathering data, talking to people, analyzing that data, and then representing your results to the public, which is typically just like a small audience of other academics. As much as I like doing that, I don't think that it fully captures the heart of what anthropology should be, right? We are people, we're social animals, we like to be included in things. And I would say the average person tries to understand other people as best as they can. So it doesn't seem to make sense to me that anthropology would be a wholly closed practice and that only a limited number of highly qualified people would have access to anthropological data and the results of what anthropologists present back using all the information that they get from people. So the questions that I was asking myself during this project were, how can I write about people in a way that really centers them and prioritizes their personhood? And again, recognizing that none of us are strictly academic creatures. So in questioning and studying humanity, that should not have to be a strictly academic process. And thus, the Puzzle Piece Cincy project was born. Again, interviewing is the tool that ethnographers use, right, to get information about people, to know what they think and feel and believe about others and the places that they live, the places that they travel to. We have to ask them. We have to ask them questions. We have to sort of observe them where they are, meet people where they are. And by conducting interviews for the Puzzle Piece Cincy project among residents, both former and current, people who work in those neighborhoods, and people who lead organizations and efforts in those neighborhoods, the story of each place begins to unfold, and you start to paint a bigger picture and understand more broadly what happens in those spaces. So that was the purpose of Puzzle Piece Cincy, was to understand what goes on in each of these, 52 neighborhoods of Cincinnati. They have these borders. People are proud of their neighborhoods. They defend their neighborhoods, and they have a general understanding of what makes their neighborhood different from others. And I really wanted to highlight that and highlight the unity within neighborhoods by conducting interviews among the people that live and work there. So I conducted a series of interviews. Each lasted for a minimum of 30 minutes. And so leaders and workers in each neighborhood donated their time to the interviews. And I let people know this, as I approached them. So I spoke with pastors at churches, nonprofit organization leaders, activists in those neighborhoods to talk about, what was established there, what was moving there. I also talked to some business owners, and those people donated their time to the project. I also talked to, everyday people who just happen to live in a place, whether or not they were born there or they moved there for work or moved there because it was affordable. They're just people who are kind of doing their thing every day. And I recruited and interviewed those people, and they were compensated with $15 Visa gift cards for their contributions. The neighborhoods that I chose for the project are Avondale, Camp Washington, and Kennedy Heights. I selected those neighborhoods because they all have a sort of rich and complex history that isn't really talked about in popular media or even among ordinary Cincinnatians. Each of these neighborhoods are places that, I personally either don't really hear talked about, or if you do hear them talked about, maybe there's a negative connotation associated with them. I don't think that it takes a social scientist to know that most people who live in a place don't really like for that place to be talked about negatively. So this was really an opportunity to hear from those people who are living and working there about what makes their neighborhood special and what people are missing out on by overlooking them or by not highlighting their stories. And so, my job is to help you understand that these places are buzzworthy, they are worthy of your attention, and hopefully by the end of this presentation, you will lean into those neighborhoods a bit more. The interview phase lasted from January of this year to June, and some of the interviews were conducted in dialogue sessions that I hosted in public, usually nonprofit spaces. And then for a lot of people, I traveled to their homes and conducted the interviews there or in businesses. So some of the interviews were pre-planned, some were impromptu, but I tried to meet people where they were, especially when it was residents and not, business owners or nonprofit workers. And that just made things a lot more accessible. And so, after conducting, numerous interviews across these three neighborhoods, I also reviewed websites, looked at databases, reviewed historical documents, and also reviewed images that people donated to the project. I designed a mural for each neighborhood. And the purpose of the mural is to tell the story of that neighborhood for primarily residents to see and feel a sense of pride in, but also for, people that may just be passing through the neighborhood or people who maybe come to the neighborhood for one specific thing, but don't really take the time to spend a lot of time there and get to know about it. Having a mural there that tells that broader story with words and pictures, I think can really, make people think differently about a space and hopefully encourage them to lean in a bit more. So the two elements of storytelling that I present on each mural are collage and poetry work. And so again, most of the images and objects were donated by participants, or if there was an image that I found online, I reached out to someone and asked if I could use it, or I at least credit that person. The images and objects are tessellated around the poetic narratives that I wrote, and those narratives are composed of quotes and sentiments that people expressed during the interviews. So when we get to actually reviewing the murals, maybe if you're on the call and you're a person that did an interview with me, maybe you'll see an image that you donated, or you will see a line that you remember saying to me. So hopefully I represented you accurately and well. To the viewer, you know, if it's a person that maybe was not a part of the project and they're just seeing the mural for the first time, the purpose is to also sort of present a number of puzzles to you, right? There's the way that the images surround the poetic narrative. The poetic narrative is a collage in itself. And then also it asks the viewer to add their piece to the story of Cincinnati and to the story of these neighborhoods. So as we move through each of the murals, I want you all to consider the following elements. So there is a specific foundation that I laid that's unique to each mural and to each neighborhood. And I used the cloth for that foundation. And then there are other elements that sort of serve as cornerstones. So I don't want to spoil it too much, but be on the lookout for those. There are threads in each of the murals, and these are the sort of ties that bind the neighborhood together and its people together. Again, there are the images that people donated or that I found through different databases. So if you live in any of these neighborhoods or work or go there, check out who or what you might recognize, and I hope it excites you. I was really interested to incorporate a lot of flora, so plant matter and living matter beyond people as much as possible to see what thrives in a space, especially because most of these spaces are urban and more developed. And then lastly, check out the gaps and see what's missing from the murals. And maybe there'll be time for you to talk about that when we move to our question and discussion portion of the presentation. So this is the Avondale mural. For each of these, I'd like to read the poetic narrative, and then I'll briefly discuss some of the images that are found in each of the murals and the symbolism presented. So this is a poetic narrative for Avondale. I didn't give any of them names because I think they just speak for themselves. Do you really want me to answer that? This used to be a really nice place to live. Used to look out my window and wouldn't see any buildings. It was really a melting pot of people, a hot spot. There used to be a Black credit union, churches everywhere. The minister's wife was so perfect. This used to be just there. Everything slowly grayed, streets ripped apart, cracked with racial divide, maybe economics too. Sometimes it sounds like target practice at night, paper dolls just fighting to stay alive. My hope is that everyone will come together, do something, else all of us will end up dead. The core hasn't been corrupted, keeps me coming back, you know. Collaboration must become the drive. Know your neighbor, be all things to all people. People in these streets will come to know the warmth of peace and unshakable joy. There's hope for Avondale. We're making it happen. Just you wait. So that is the first of the 3 poetic narratives that was written, collaging all of the quotes and sentiments that I got from people. There'll be time to speak on that once we get to the question and comment section. But for now, I want to show you all some of the images. I won't take too long with it because we're limited for time. But the thread that I chose to sew Avondale together is this purple ribbon. And one of the pastors in Avondale gave me purple as the color of Avondale because he said that it is a color that people forget is a symbol of royalty and power, and it's often overused and taken advantage of. And so what I've done is threaded this purple ribbon through a number of historic locations, primarily churches. This is the Avondale Library, and these are all churches that you can find in Avondale. And I found that churches were really the cornerstones of the Avondale community. A lot of people talked about the churches they attended, either currently or growing up. And there are also like over 20 churches within the small space that is Avondale. So that was really striking to me. I also got a lot of family photos. Some of these here are wonderful family photos that were donated to me by a participant whose family founded a street in Avondale, and her family, all of the houses on that street were built and owned by her family. The street is still there. Some of the houses are still there, and it's Burns Avenue, I believe, in Avondale. And then among that are just a number of other images, right? We have Marion Spencer Way here, who was a part of the NAACP. People talked a lot about the strong activist roots in Avondale and spoke to how they don't necessarily appreciate Avondale being viewed as a center of riots and violence, and noted that the riots that took place there were because people were brave enough to speak out about the racial injustices that were taking place in Cincinnati and across the country at the time, and that still take place today. And so what a lot of people may view as senseless violence is actually people demanding respect and consideration and still wanting to be invested in as citizens of Cincinnati. So there's a lot more to view here, but I will end it at that and move on to the next mural. So this is the mural that I designed for Camp Washington. Again, I'm going to read the narrative here and then take you all on a brief tour. Work, then leave, is the idea some people have of this place. Bus diesel fuel fumes and train screeches ride asphalt-baked air through demo rubble yards and vacant houses. Used to be homes. Used to be a place of men who profited from the grit. The laughter of their children only occupies Facebook pages these days as older, wiser forms, nestled within other borders, convene in comment sections saying, remember when? Remember, this place will humble you. Those proficient in the oldest profession and vice slinging now roam these streets, perhaps with some sort of will and intention to do good. A hotbed of transience, sometimes to places from which we can't return. Frayed wires make for unstable connections. Still, we can restore, help people pause, offer the trees a chance to root, and let the one who holds the other finally too be held. Beloved community will grow through these cracks. Maintain compassion. There's so much good riding the next boxcar in. So yes, so that's the poetic narrative I wrote for Camp Washington, a neighborhood that is, full of train rails and boxcars, some still in use, some empty. A lot of people talked about how Camp Washington was a place that they used to live or used to go to visit restaurants or businesses that haven't been there for decades. So it was just really interesting to sort of talk to so many people that were reflecting on it as a memory and not talking about it as an actively used space. And so here you see a lot of black and white photos. These are photos of school children, schools that have since closed or, sort of been absorbed by the district and formatted into, larger schools. There used to be, more specifically a girls' school and German language taught in the schools, and those things are no more. Camp Washington, of course, used to be a hotbed of of industry. So the trains that were coming in were, producing things for chemical factories and slaughterhouses and, just a number of smaller factories that produce goods that ultimately, fuel the American way of living across the country during their heyday. So there's a lot of, images of the former layout of Camp Washington, and there's this sort of grid of just like industry and the smoke that, people talked about wafting over the city. If you all don't know, this is a cow named Cincinnati Freedom, and she got famous because she escaped a slaughterhouse in Camp Washington, and apparently it was this amazing feat, and she jumped over all the barbed wire and evaded police for like 11 or 12 days or so. And so, since she put up a good enough fight, they decided that she deserved her freedom, and I think she got to live her days as a happy cow. We also have a lot of repurposing of buildings. Wave Pool, my sponsoring organization, is hosted in Camp Washington. And so it is in an old firehouse. So I sort of created this bricolage image. This is an old picture of the firehouse when it was in use. And this door is now the door to Wave Pool. So if you're ever in Camp Washington, be sure to check out Wave Pool. There are another number of other talented artists who have features there, so check them out. I also got to speak with a lot of other nonprofit and religious leaders in the org. There are a number of up and coming businesses. Coffee houses are starting to take root in Camp Washington and actually have quite a bit of success there. And now people are traveling to the neighborhood to work and eat there, which is amazing. But, the old ways of the train yard aren't quite gone. The trains still run, that whole Queens Gate to Camp Washington area is very much still in use. So there's a lot going on in Camp Washington, and don't overlook it. Go check it out. Have some chili at Camp Washington Chili. It's still good. I eat there sometimes, or at least I did when I was still living in Cincinnati. And then last but not least, we have Kennedy Heights. So again, I'm going to read the poetic narrative and then take you all on a tour. Through the moss, a breeze from Duck Creek Valley wafts soft waves of buskin, or mystery smells from the chemical factory. Can't quite put my finger on it. An experiment, just like this. Truly intentionally integrated community. Racial reconciliation. My neighbors don't look like me, and that's a beautiful thing. Pebbly, but not a puree. You can talk to anybody. Progressive dinner, sap run, sledding at Drake, lots of parades. Heart of community sometimes beats till 4 a.m. Fall asleep to the rumbles of I-71 and trick myself into thinking it's the rush of the ocean. Wake up thankful to still be here. You don't really want to leave. Other people have different visions for this place. Sometimes seems like we're being eaten away, cut up by redistricting, burned down mysteriously. Doesn't make any sense. They'll never kill the spirit of it though, never take over. The sun is always shining on Kennedy Heights. Get comfortable and discover the difference. So that is the final poetic narrative I wrote after speaking with residents and leaders in Kennedy Heights, which was Cincinnati's first and one of America's first intentionally racially integrated communities. Despite Jim Crow laws not necessarily having a hold north of the Mason-Dixon line, there is still a lot of racism in the north and a lot of sort of de facto discrimination and segregation that was taking place. So in Kennedy Heights, primarily white and Black people got together to decide that anyone could own land, anyone could send their children to the same schools, anyone could eat dinner together, and they have kept up this very intentional project for decades now. And I spoke to a number of people who are the children and grandchildren of some of the sort of establishing pioneers of the modern day Kennedy Heights, and they talk about how they have no intention of leaving. And so in this, you really see the density and the lushness of Kennedy Heights as a place. People donated images of these sort of first racially integrated community schools. Kennedy Heights Montessori School is still in effect, and it serves preschool children. There are also other educational organizations in Kennedy Heights that still keep that mission of intentional diversity up. There's also, food was a prominent element. People love to dine together, and sharing food and breaking bread with neighbors was a way that people expressed their love and acceptance of one another. So you see elements of that throughout. You also just see a lot of plant matter. People in Kennedy Heights really care about their green spaces and keeping those spaces clean and available for public use. So you just see a lot of that in the mural. The residents of Kennedy Heights were really enthusiastic about the project, and I appreciated that. And they were excited for an opportunity to, tell Cincinnati and the world at large about their neighborhood that is this project. And I wish all of them the best of luck. So that sort of concludes that presentation portion. You can stay posted for the actual installation of these images as murals in each neighborhood at puzzlepiececincy.com. And there, you can kind of take your time to peruse the murals and see the elements of each and really, sit with the poetic narratives that I've written. The Kennedy Heights mural is currently being installed at the Kennedy Heights Art Center. The Camp Washington mural will be installed later this month at the Methodist Church that is up the street from Wave Pool. And Pastor Aaron Sowery is the leader there, and he's been a really enthusiastic and collaborative partner. And then lastly, I am working to secure a location for the mural in Avondale, but I hope to put it on Reading Road in a prominent location on a building there. So stay tuned. You can also follow the project on my Instagram at One Rare Creature. And so that is what I have to present for you all today. And I want to open the floor up to any questions that you all might have for me, or comments or questions that you might have for other residents and leaders in the project. And then we'll reserve the sort of last 5 minutes for thank yous. But Cal, I will let you do the moderating of the Q&A.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Ashley-Devon. It was amazing. If you would like to ask a question, you can raise your hand. I think that's the easiest way, because for whatever reason, the way we have this set up, I need to give you permission. Or you can ask a question in the chat and I will voice it out either way. Anybody? So to raise your digital hand, it's in the bottom where it says raise hand, just to be clear. Oh, here we go. Okay. Mary Camp.
Yes, Ashley, I think your project is wonderful. It's great to see the final images of what you had planned. Thank you so much for allowing me to be part of it. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And thank you for your active and enthusiastic participation.
You're most welcome.
Hello, Ashley-Devon. This is Louise. I love Avondale. This was absolutely amazing. I would, I'm just sorry I wasn't part of the interview, and I wish I could have been available for that. Amazing. So I'm a community connector. I love unity. So thanks for adding to my dialogue and my purpose as far as humanity. This is amazing. I'm just so proud of you. So thank you so much for sharing this.
Thank you. That's my aunt, everyone, and a proud resident of Avondale. She didn't get to participate in the interviews, but hopefully now you get to go out and talk to more people. And then when the mural goes up, you can tell them to go check it out.
Yes, I will. Perfect. Perfect.
Well, I have a question for you, if you don't mind. The poems were just so striking, and I felt just so fitting for each of the neighborhoods. And I know that you were highly informed by the interviews, but I'm just wondering, you know, what, like, how you were able to like synthesize all that down into such a, I mean, the Camp Washington one, because, you know, I've lived there for so long, it just like really hit home. And I just want to say like how incredible it was that you were able to just really pinpoint the narrative in such a succinct and really beautiful way. So I'm just curious about like how much of that came directly from the resident interviews, or was some of it kind of like a gut feeling or through your own research?
Yeah, that's a great question, Cal. So the reason I describe the poetic narratives as also being sort of puzzles and collages is because I did a lot of sort of clipping and rearranging of the interviews. So, you know, if you participated in the interview phase, you know that I recorded all of them and I secured your permissions to record those interviews. So I sat and listened back to them, for most of them a couple of times. I listened back and I pulled quotes that were really striking to me and that really captured what you all were telling me you felt about the places that you live. For people that don't know, I am a research analyst is my day job. So I am employed as a cultural anthropologist, and it's my job to ask people their thoughts about things and then sort of analyze and synthesize and condense those things down into, 2 or 3 sentences sometimes. So I do have years of experience taking 1 to 2 hour interviews and turning them into just little blurbs that people can read and very quickly understand the essence of what was talked about. And so I wanted to take that thing that I do for work every day, that's a very academic and strict sort of regimented process, and find a way to do that artistically. So I just played around with the quotes and played around with the sentiment that I felt was being conveyed from people and used that to write the poems. And from what the feedback I'm getting, it seems like I was pretty successful. So that's exciting.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Thank you. Oh, someone else has a question. Here we go. Go ahead, Anjanette.
First, I'd like to say, Ashley, super proud of you. I had no idea. And is this something we could expect to see in other communities? Or is this specific to the 3 that you have? Hang on a minute. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah. So thank you. And I am trying to figure out a way to continue ethnographic artistry, I guess is what I call it, through my MFA. And I'm hoping that my MFA thesis will be an expansion of a related project. So this was sort of my first step into ethnographic artistry. Again, it's taking a very rigid academic practice and turning it into something that is looser, but still high quality and still actually achieves the goals of ethnography. And so that's why I applied for an MFA program. I got in, I'm here, and I'm hoping to do this, maybe here in Brooklyn, or maybe secure residencies in other places and do the same thing. But I expect that my life's work will hopefully forever be similarly related ethnographic artistry work.
I love it. Involves the community of all ages. I absolutely love it. Great job, hon.
Thank you.
If I can add, I would love to see a book of these of all 52 neighborhoods. If we could ever get enough funding to do that, it would be amazing.
I would love that too. That would take years. But yeah, I feel like that would be an achievable goal over maybe the span of about 5 years. But it was difficult to recruit people for the project because it's not a thing that's ever been done. And so how do you explain to people something that's not been done before and then convince them to tell you all their feelings and thoughts about something when they aren't sure how those things will be applied? And now that I have a product and an end result, hopefully more people will see it and say, yes, I would love to participate in something like that and contribute to that story. So maybe it wouldn't take as much time.
Go ahead, Solomon. I think Solomon has a question, but can't get him to unmute.
While we wait for that, I see that one of my participants commented and thanked me for including their family history in the project. And one of my participants said that they cherish the memories of Avondale. So yeah, so I didn't necessarily list all my participants and I want to protect their privacy. But anyone who's willing to, speak up and say that they participated in the project and share it with other people and, promote yourself as someone who contributed, you are welcome to. And I hope that I did everyone's neighborhood justice through the project.
Well, I feel I'm sorry, Solomon, if you want to ask in the chat, I'm not sure why we can't get you to unmute. but feel free to type a question if that works. Anyone else have questions, thoughts? Here we go. Mary Camp.
Yes. I was a participant for Kennedy Heights neighborhood. Ashley is my cousin. But that's not why I participated. I participated because it was an opportunity to tell another group of people about our neighborhood and what we've accomplished over the years. We sat down with 2 or 3 other neighbors, and it was wonderful, just reminiscing and talking about events, some that we had completely forgotten, but were fond memories. So thank you so much for bringing those fond memories out again and shaking them out and cleaning them off, dusting them off. We had such a lovely time. Ashley is a great interviewer. I like the way she does things.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
I'm glad. Yeah, you wrangled Kennedy Heights for me, and I really appreciate that. And then once that ball was rolling, people were into it. So
Yes.
it was wonderful.
Very
I
good.
have a question from the Saul family asking me to talk about the sunflowers in the Avondale mural. And so this is like nothing super particular. I've just seen sunflowers around, specifically like near the zoo. And sometimes people have sunflowers in their yards in Avondale. I guess maybe as privacy fences. But then also I just like colors and vibrancy because it's otherwise a very grayscale mural. So that's why I included those. And if anyone has any other questions about the specifics of an image or word or quote that you saw, I can answer that as well. If that's everyone's questions, then maybe I'll move on to thank yous and acknowledgements. So let's see, I'm gonna collapse this so I can read. When you do Zoom, you get all these extra bars in front of your face that obscure the presentation. So, you know, this project, Puzzle Piece Cincy, would be impossible without the hard work and dedication of the following people. First and foremost, I want to thank Cal Cullen, who is our hostess today and is also the director at Wave Pool. Like I said, this was a difficult project to articulate because I had a vision that was pretty unique, and it was even difficult for me to fully know what the mechanics of the project would be. So a lot of it was sort of like, you know, play around with things and find out and make it work. And Cal has been so committed to helping me and being there for me, you know, from day one. So Cal, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you. And I appreciate the way that you support all of the Wave Pool artists. So thank you so much.
You're
If
so
you're
welcome.
in your house, clap for Cal.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you.
I also want to thank Maria, who also works with Cal at Wave Pool, and she's been there. Sometimes Cal travels and is assisting other artists, and Maria has been there to also provide support for me. So I just really appreciate Wave Pool as an organization and the staff there. And then I'd like to thank Decca Hussein Wetzel, who is a historian and host of the Urban Roots podcast. She does a lot of architectural research in Avondale, and she also donated some of her own interviews that she's conducted with Avondale residents to the project. So I really, really appreciated her support. I'd like to thank April Galilee, who at the time was an organizer and a leader at the Avondale Development Corps. I think that now she's working for a different branch of the city, but April was a huge support and I appreciate her. Also in Avondale, Bishop Ennis Tate, who is the pastor at New Beginnings Church of the Living God, which is in Avondale, in the same building that hosts the NAACP. For Camp Washington, I'd like to thank Reverend Dr. Aaron Maurice Sowery, who is at the Washington United Church, which is where the Camp Washington mural will be displayed. He also did an interview with me, and I really appreciate him. I'd like to thank the employees at the Well in Camp Washington, Stacy Sims, Roe, and Bryce, who took the time to talk to me about their goals in Camp Washington, and Mimi Rook, and all of the other wonderful people that are on the Camp Washington Community Council who, gave me the green light for the project and supported me. I'd like to thank Ellen Muse-Lindman, Mary Kid Ray, Susan Frazier, Mallory Fetz, and all of the other wonderful people at the Kennedy Heights Arts Center. Again, the Kennedy Heights mural is going to be on the side of the Arts Center building on that campus. It is sort of between the Montessori School and the Martial Arts Studio facing Montgomery. So go check that out, and installation should be completed soon. And Kate Elliott and Sharifa Tafari, who are on the Kennedy Heights Community Council, their council also gave me the green light for the project in their neighborhood. And then last but not least, everyone who contributed their voices, time, memories, images, trinkets, and passions for each of the neighborhoods to the project. For your protection and privacy, your names are not listed, but you are remembered and honored. And hopefully, thanks to the project, your neighborhoods will be as well. So that is what I have for you this evening. And I hope that this inspires you all to connect more with community, to lean into any of these neighborhoods. If you don't live in them, remember that they are just as worthy of your time as the Banks or Over the Rhine, and they have wonderful people there that are doing great things. So thank you.
Thank you so much. This is wonderful.
And with that, should we close out? I'm not sure what to do to close out.
Yeah, I'll end it. And we'll put this up on our YouTube as well. Thank you so much, Ashley-Devon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.